Hey guys, I just wanted to get on here and talk about understanding and that it's okay not to understand sometimes. We go through a lot of things as humans, not understanding certain things that God does, and at His timing and what purposes it was for. So I was just praying to God, thanking Him, and telling Him, even though I didn't understand what was taking place, now I do. But even in the moment that He brought back to my realization the things that were taking place, I didn't understand at that time. So, and He let me know it's okay to not understand. Like He says, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. And that is so amazing because us going through our human experience, we feel all these emotions, we feel the things that, we go through, we get all of that pushed onto us. And He let me know it's okay to not understand. And I know it can be overwhelming. I know that things seem to always come at us, or God is telling you something to do that you're just not understanding why. Like, God, why are you doing this? Or, what's the purpose of this? Eventually, God lets us know that. But He brought, a revelation to me. Me going through my divorce with my ex-husband, and my obedience in that, as far as God letting me know, like, this is not the relationship I want you in. I heard a word, God prophesied, had a prophetic word as far as, and I knew it was pertaining to my situation. Like, I just knew. And it came from a woman of God, when she was teaching at my church I attend. And I knew it was prophetic because she didn't know anything about my situation, but she was hitting on specific points of what I was going through. So, He brought back to my memory, like, I was frustrated. When I got home that day, I went into my secret place and I cried. I was like, why do I gotta be embarrassed? Why do I have to go through this? Why do I have to feel the way that I'm feeling? It was a lot of whys because at the moment I did not want to lose my family. I knew the relationship was not healthy, but I was praying at one point to turn it around, to make it work, to try to see, and I wasn't a perfect wife, but I know I was trying to be, eventually once I grew into my marriage, because I married, just coming off the streets, and married quickly, and we were trying to do it the right way, but that's not who I was supposed to be with, but we had a beautiful son, but I remember having those feelings. I remember the rejection I went through with my ex-husband. It was a lot of rejection in that marriage towards me, and it was public rejection, like right in my church. And, me coming off the streets, just getting married, I'm sure a lot of people was like, well, this is happening because of that. I'm sure he was telling people certain stuff, so it seemed like, a lot of stuff was just my fault. And I felt like that at some point, like, am I even doing this right? But God started to talk to me about, it wasn't the right relationship, and that came through the word as far as abuse verbal abuse, stuff like that. You don't stay in things of that nature, or you let that go and they work on themselves, and maybe God will bless that to come back, but that would be up to his will. In my case, I had to let it go, and that was it. But I remember feeling those feelings of, I don't understand, I'm confused, why do I have to go through this? Why I'm going to be embarrassed? That's embarrassing. A lot of people, church is small. A lot of people will know certain things before you even say anything. I never even really had to say anything, but the situation was public. So he was just letting me know, it's okay to not understand. It's when you don't understand, but you start turning away from what he has called over your life, or what, you are, like the righteousness. You stand on the course. Just because something happened in your life, you don't go run out and fall back into sin and do this, because it's 7 times worse when you go back out there. And this is in a church that speaks the truth. This is in a church that doesn't sugarcoat nothing. They speak truth and from the Bible. So it's like, what you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to turn away, and I was so far gone from the streets at that time. If I would have went out there, I probably would die, because I haven't been out in the streets in 7 years, because I got back in church 7 years ago. So I haven't really been in the streets that long. I still know what's going on because of social media, stuff like that, local social media, but I'm not in the streets. I'm not actively in that anymore. And I have a son to raise, and that anchored me as well. And I thank God for my son, because I'm like, God, what would I do? Even just falling back into lust, or, falling back into talking to multiple dudes, or, you can do any of that. And then all of a sudden you back in sin, But I took accountability, and I knew the word. I knew what I wasn't supposed to do, So it's okay not to understand. Just don't fall back, and you can ask God questions like, God, why is this happening? Why is that happening? I now know why that happened. And God restored my peace, my joy. I was hurt, and I went through my process of feeling down, feeling like, okay, he's really about to move out. I'm scared. I ain't been by myself. I never really was by myself. I always had people around me. Now I'm by myself, but I have God. So it's a different by myself. I get lonely, I would say, but I don't feel alone, because I know I can always anchor into God. So, after I was done praying, God told me to read Psalm 18. So I'm going to read a verse for you guys, because it just spoke on what I was praying to him. Like, God, thank you for, restoring my peace. I didn't understand what was going on at the time, but you have showed me, and you have gave me understanding. And I'm going to read Psalm 18, verse 22. It says, for all his judgments were before me, and I did not put away his statutes from me. I was also upright before him, and I kept myself from mine iniquity. Therefore hath the Lord recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his eyesight. So that just let me know, okay, God, so even though I was having so much come up against me, even though I was feeling down, I was embarrassed, I didn't understand fully at the moment why things were happening the way that they were, I didn't go out there and fall back into iniquity. I didn't go back out there and just let myself fall into sin again. I sat there. I went through the emotions. I still showed up. I still was hi to everybody, even though I was to myself at that time because I was just going through a lot. I didn't let it harden my heart, and I didn't fall back into the things that I once knew before just to fill a void. And I remember God had gave me Psalm 46:10, and it was, be still and know that I am God. And I remember at that point in a time, I was separated, I was going through a lot, had a lot coming on me because, okay, now I'm alone. And I was just crying to God about, like, God, like, I need to make some moves. Or, I probably was trying to do it on my own, or, trying to figure out something. And God was like, Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. And I needed it. I needed that at that moment because I'm like, okay, God, okay, I just got to rest in you. After that, the isolation started, and God started revealing things to me. God started giving me understanding, wisdom of his word. I started to seek things because he told me it started to all come into fruition. So I just want to let, somebody know it's okay not to understand. It's okay to feel the feelings that we feel when we're going through something. Just don't get out of alignment with God. Don't let feelings, because that's when you let your feelings overtake the word of God, or let your feelings overtake what you are going through, that's when we start making decisions. That's when we start moving wrong. That's when we start, being like, oh, I'm going to just do it my own way. We get that little attitude. Everybody got it. But that's when we start doing that. But if you be still and know that he is God, he starts to reveal things. He starts to let you know. He starts to let you know the path you need to go on. And it hurts. It does hurt because you're like, God, when am I going to feel this way? When am I going to feel that way? When is it going to be over? And, God is a God of long suffering. That's one of the fruits of the Spirit. So it's like, we got to understand God has a timing, a divine timing for everything. And we're not going to understand everything he does. We're just not going to. But it all comes together and you get those revelations. And I made mistakes in my marriage, so but it was a reason why it had to end. But I will say I'm thankful that I didn't just move. Don't move without consulting with God. Don't move quickly and swiftly. If you have to sit in your feelings and you have to cry it out and you have to go through those emotions, go through them, because eventually God is going to start revealing. God is going to start bringing forth, the revelation of things. Why this had to happen, why that happened. And some stuff he might not ever tell us why it happened. Some stuff he might not ever reveal. And that's for him to know and for him to see how we move in the situation. But sometimes he might not tell us. God don't have to tell us everything, But I know in that moment when he brought that realization to me that I did not move, I stayed grounded. Yes, I was going through all my emotions. Yes, I was hurt. I'm sure people was looking at me like, yeah, she failed, or look, her marriage didn't last, and we were married for 7 years, and it still was a blow because I made a family, it was my family. But I thank God I did not move based off my feelings. And I moved and sat still and waited on him to start bringing things to my realization. But see, I just knew I couldn't go back out there too. I'm like, I'm too far gone. What I'm gonna do? Like I ain't been out there. I've been a married woman. I've been, in the church, but me and my ex-husband, we met outside of the church in the streets, so we tried to do it right. But I just thank God that I grew in that, and I'm not where I want to be. There's still times emotions come up, still times where I'm feeling like, okay, God, what's this, but I'm still grounded. I still get on my knees when I am feeling overwhelmed like that. I still get on my knees and pray. I still ask God to give me clarity. I still ask God to help me in those areas that I need help. But I'm not making moves off of emotions. I'm not making moves off my feelings. And that's, when you get an understanding with God and you start to realize, like, okay, feelings can mess you up. And that's been all of us. All of us have had feelings mess us up to where we doing something. Now all of a sudden we 10 times deep into it based off our feelings. But I just want to let you know it's okay not to understand. Just pray to God for understanding. And sometimes if he's silent, if he's not saying anything, just sit still, because eventually he will reveal it or something else will come up, and then you will realize and be like, oh God, that's why you did that. Okay, now I get it. So I just wanted to get on here and let somebody know, maybe somebody needed to hear, be still and know that I am God. All right.